I was asked for tips on how to manage V-meter with the addition of V-shift. My short answer is I can't give you concrete rules to follow because this is different for every character, but I can give you examples with a few different characters and easy questions to ask yourself to figure it out for yourself. Before we get started, let's cover how you build V-meter. The most common way you're going to build V-meter is simply getting hit. How much damage you need to take depends on your character's total health, since the game is balanced to require 2/3 of your total health for 3-bar activations and 44% for 2-bar activations. So the required damage for 1 bar rounds to 22% of your character's total health. The second way to gain V-meter is V-skills. This one is very dependent on your character, so we'll only cover the universal rules here. For V-skills that function as attacks, your V-meter gain is scaled just like your damage. Some V-skills build a flat amount of meter when used in neutral. And some are installs that grant your special moves V-meter gain on whiff, hit, block, or some mix of all three depending on the character. Note that the V-meter gain on these install specials is also subject to scaling. The last way to gain V-meter is to get a crush counter. This is also heavily character dependent, as the quality of crush counters in this game is certainly not equal. One good balancing choice was making crush counters that lead to more restrictive juggles or limited follow-ups give you more V-meter than the stagger or crumple states, so there's at least some incentive to use them. With that out of the way, I think the major takeaway question is, how easily can your character build V-meter through V-skills and crush counters? Assuming you're playing opponents around your level, the V-meter gain from taking hits is pretty much guaranteed. So just picture every fifth of your health as representing a bar of V-meter. So in short, the more V-meter you build through gray damage that recovers by blocking medium-heavy normals or using armor, and using V-skills and landing crush counters, the more you can use early V-shifts and V-reversals without cutting yourself off of later trigger activations. However, there is one danger of getting a lot of V-meter. It turns out the easiest way to gain V-meter is also the easiest way to lose access to it throughout the match. You don't want to take damage at all if you can avoid it, but you really don't want to take damage while you're at full V-meter or while your trigger is active, because then you're taking damage and gaining nothing from it. Let's look into some hypothetical scenarios. Here is the game state. As Cammy, I've crush countered a parry and a DP to build 1 bar, and my opponent has anti-aired me once, landed a throw, and I've blocked some fireballs. Looking at the health bars, we could both activate right now and have enough health left to activate again if we make it through our trigger time unscathed. For our first hypothetical, let's assume I land a Crouch Fierce. Because I trigger cancelled, my combo is going to be scaled harder. If I wanted to make sure I was going to get the chance to pop another V-trigger this round, this would be my punish. From here, my opponent is very unlikely to get another V-bar for a V-reversal or V-shift after he activates, much less an entire second activation. This forces a tough decision on my opponent to attempt the comeback without his V-trigger, or to win the round quickly after activating. Remember, I have almost 2 bars, and if he's still in trigger when I get access to my critical art, then I can force a checkmate scenario the next time he blocks anything I do. By picking up the extra damage cashing out my trigger, I've effectively denied him of his resources while also giving myself another trigger later in the round. This position is very advantageous for me. Same scenario, but I have a lot less health, but I get the same confirm into my trigger. Now, it's arguable that trigger canceling here is a bad idea for the same reasons as earlier. I'm essentially giving up my defensive options, but at the end of the day, I'm a Cammy player, and no one can stop me from activating off Crouch Fierce, least of all myself. However, I do recognize that if I'm going to activate in this situation, then cashing out my trigger is not the answer. I don't have enough health to get another V-bar anyway to prevent a checkmate scenario, so if I'm going to win this match, it involves me forcing situations with V-trigger 1 dive kick and turning my 2 remaining critical art bars into big damage, so ending the combo and sweep for Oki is the best play. Last example, I'm getting destroyed by this Urian player, and I foolishly popped my V-trigger and got very little from it. Now I'm in trouble because any touch will lead to a chip kill with his critical art. My primary goal is to build a bar of V-meter to take his critical art off the table. So I landed a random sweep. If you didn't know, Boxer is plus enough after dash up on his sweep to dash back and make Urian's critical art whiff. But if I dash back to avoid the critical art, EX Headbutt can catch me. My opponent might assume I'm not stupid enough to dash up and block. Unfortunately for him, I am that stupid. I didn't know beforehand if Boxer's stand roundhouse crush counter would give me enough V-meter to get a V-bar, so I took no chances and used Crouch Fierce, which grants more V-meter and lets me convert into V-skill punch for good measure, and it lets me cash out my other bar for more damage and corner carry. I'm not out of the woods yet, since my opponent still has his trigger, a significant health lead, and will have his critical art soon, but at least I gave myself a chance to not get checkmated. Still, probably a losing scenario, but this situation is much better than it was. So to answer my friend's question is a little difficult, because it's very dependent on your character, your opponent's character, the remaining health of the characters, the timer, critical art gauge, etc. If you're dependent on V-reversal or V-shift in the matchup, then you should try to block to get free V-meter through the gray damage, use your crush counters and V-skill when able. When deciding whether to save or spend your V-meter, ask if you can afford to eat a big combo and gain no V-meter from it. If the answer is no, you should probably pop your trigger and get whatever mileage you can from it, especially if it's only 2 bars. I think the only way to get better at managing this resource is to actively practice it and keep it in mind when watching your own replays and when you watch high-level players. You'd be surprised how often you can tell why they spent a bar in a situation you've never thought about before. That's all I have. Thanks for watching.